Yeah. Story of Edward Snowden, Part 1.
Set up the camera, Glenn was asking the questions, and normally Snowden wore a t-shirt, and Glenn says, "Can you not find a shirt?" And Snowden went off and found a grey shirt.
My name's Ed Snowden. I'm 29 years old. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton as an infrastructure analyst for NSA in Hawaii. What we see is someone who is calm, rational, persuasive. The NSA specifically targets the communications of everyone. It ingests them by default. It collects them in its system, and it filters them, and it analyzes them, and it measures them, and it stores them.
The language was clear, sympathetic, and when he did the interview, it was as if he was a media natural. So we knew that when Snowden went public, it was going to be a huge story.
Why should people care about surveillance?
Because even if you're not doing anything wrong, you're being watched and recorded. And he sets out why he's done this thing, and what his motives are, and basically sort of puts the ball in the court of the public and says, you make up your minds as to whether this is right or not. These things need to be determined by the public, not by somebody who was simply hired by the government. This is the truth. This is what's happening. You should decide whether we need to be doing this.
Edward Snowden, according to The Guardian, is in Hong Kong.
Contractor who leaked the existence of NSA programs.
Snowden fled to Hong Kong 3 weeks ago after copying.
We knew that the minute we unveiled his identity, that he was going to have to go into hiding, because the media horde was about to descend onto Hong Kong and would be looking for him, and the U.S. government would certainly be looking for him.
At that point, he knew it was untenable. Some enterprising journalist had put up on Twitter the pictures of the hotel room and says, "Does anybody recognize these light fittings?" And someone was able to establish it was a mirror.
This is where Edward Snowden is believed to have. Their hotel is just across the harbor.
So Snowden knew they were on their way. So about midday, he left his hotel room.
And there was definitely a kind of air of sadness over our last meeting, because I had assumed that the next time I saw him, he was going to be in U.S. custody on a television screen.
Snowden left it to the journalists to decide which documents to publish, and then he disappeared into the crowded streets of Hong Kong. For 2 weeks, he managed to elude the world's press corps
In Hong Kong.
Apparently still in Hong Kong.
and to avoid U.S. authorities.
Against Edward Snowden has been charged with 2 counts of espionage and theft of
This guy is a traitor. He's a
On
defector.
June 23rd, Edward Snowden set off for South America via Russia.
transit through Russia. Supposedly he's headed for Ecuador.
He ended up in Russia for one very simple reason, and that is that the United States government forced him to stay there by preventing him from leaving.
Snowden is believed to be holed up inside
In the
Moscow's
transit zone of Moscow Airport.
Metadata phone
Well, he
collection.
could no longer get a ticket and leave Russia because his passport had been revoked by the U.S. government.
People may die as a consequence of what this man did. And anybody who wants to make him a hero is misjudging how they...
The man on the run from U.S. authorities.
One of the greatest security breaches in American
Russia has granted Edward Snowden asylum.
Edward Snowden was granted asylum in Russia.
Less likely he will ever see inside of a U.S. courtroom.
Has filed a lawsuit challenging the
Back
NSA's
in the U.S., at NSA headquarters, the news hit hard.
Headline, and it has grown bigger.
Trolling through billions of phone records.
It was hard to read in the press. NSA is lawless, NSA out of control. None of those resonate with us. That's not us. That's not what we are aiming towards. That's not how we hold ourselves accountable. Our ultimate goal is to prevent bad things from happening, to ensure the national security.
You want to draw the box differently? You want to have the security community work in a smaller box? I got it. But before you do that, you got to understand. You got to understand what the costs might be. I mean, we live inside a democracy, and, the public will matters in a democracy. I just hope it's informed public will. And frankly, when the decisions are made, you understand the costs.
We have to strike the right balance between protecting our security and preserving our freedoms.
The president did what executives in the midst of a controversy often do.
Review of our surveillance programs.
He appointed a panel.
So I'm tasking this independent group to step
This
back
one to review the NSA's programs.
And they will provide an interim report in 60 days and a final report by the end of this year so that we can move forward with a better understanding of how these...
His directions were go wherever you want. You can see any classified program. No one can deny you any information. You can go anywhere in the intelligence community. You can recommend anything, except realize that what I won't accept is any block between me and my constitutional oath of defending the United States.
U.S. internet companies. The highly classified program is codenamed PRISM.
The Guardian and the Washington Post both reported that the national security...
On the other side of the country, in Silicon Valley, there was anger and confusion over just what kind of access major internet companies were giving the NSA.
Extracting audio, video, photographs, and email.
There was shock and disbelief and horror. A lot of people I know, Silicon Valley type people, just felt, it can't be right. It's not possible. Google, Facebook, these guys are collaborating. It's just not what they would do.
CEOs of internet companies like Facebook and Google deny.
The companies scrambled to respond to the news.
Google denies that they have direct access. Who's right?
They freaked out because they'd never heard of a program called PRISM, and they were not letting the NSA get direct access to their servers. They were cooperating with a secret program that they really couldn't describe in sufficient detail to their customers.
It's very sensitive.
These NSA folks are saying it's the...
They saw here a big threat to their image, to their business model, which relies on people to trust them with their communications. And they started issuing quite heated statements, taking issue with the idea that they would be just handing over free access to the NSA.
But then there was more bad news.
The Washington Post, citing documents stolen and released by Edward
PRISM was only part of what the NSA was up to.
Newly disclosed way the NSA is monitoring...
In a program called Muscular, the NSA was secretly extracting data from fiber optic cables overseas, where intelligence operations are much less restrained by surveillance laws.
PRISM was the front door. PRISM was the court saying you have to cooperate with the NSA and give specific information when asked. Now they find out that through the back door, the government is actually breaking into their infrastructure and taking whatever they want.
They can't intentionally look for a U.S. person's information unless they believe it's a legitimate foreign target, but otherwise they're free to collect data pretty much unrestricted abroad. They can hack into companies' internal networks and collect information in bulk.
The NSA did this by invoking a Reagan-era presidential order from a time long before the modern internet.
The NSA decided it was okay under Executive Order 12333 and with the backing of the Justice Department and the White House to break into the private links, the private data links that connect the data centers of Google and Yahoo around the world. You're collecting a very large fraction of the whole planet's internet traffic, and that includes a very large number of Americans.
Project identified by the codename Muscular.
Please like and share this video.